Ladies and gentlemen, this training is about disaster readiness. It's about you getting ready and being prepared for any kind of disaster. This training is a means to standardize our method of working, enable us to communicate in the same language, and also build skills and capacity within the local community.
Rotuma is a critical area of the country that we needed to support, and we are thankful that we have had the Australian Government funding support to implement a program that we all are funded through, and this is the Australian Humanitarian Partnership Fund, specifically focusing on disaster readiness.
History, Rotumans travel by canoes, and as they come back home, families welcome back them in the form of mamasa. Anoint them with oil, and the significance of that, of course, is to remove the salt water and the saltiness on the body, and put fresh water on the body.
There's a big gap between the elderly and our youth generation. And this training is like a bridging point where we can reduce the gap and also have common understanding between the elderly and the young. It is, what we have done with the participants, we have mixed them up, government officials together with youth, so that they can have an understanding of what government does during disaster in an operation room outside of the operation center. They need to understand how government function during a disaster. What will be their role? What will be their role in the community? Understanding what to do when a disaster happens. How do you look after the elderly, disability, children? How to protect them during a disaster? Those are some of the things that I believe this training has enabled us to bridge the gap and also give us knowledge and a common understanding.
The Rotuma EOC training was really a good experience for me as a person with disability, and we are thankful to Live and Learn and NDMO and other inclusion partners and our donor, the AHP PPF Disaster Ready, for that opportunity to be part of the team and see and experience for myself the situation of people with disabilities, and also providing the disability inclusion lens during the 2 days of the inclusion training was a good experience, and also good platform to network with all the government representatives that were attending the training, and also the head teachers and youth reps, and just hearing from them on their understanding about disability or disability inclusion, around preparedness, response and recovery period.
And I think with that change in mindset will impact on how we set up things, set up our responses to emergencies, set up our responses during normal times. When you construct a house, or particularly community centers, you look at those things, that it is not for the norm, but it is for everybody. Looking at how a person will come up with a wheelchair, looking at getting a washroom for the disabilities. And so what was mentioned by the lady yesterday, to me was something that the Ditumuto community needs to think about, because she mentioned about how she felt about the community center, that although it is helpful in some sense, there are things that need to be done to be user-friendly for the disabilities. And I certainly agree. But remember, when the community center was built many years ago, that thinking was not around.
I count myself as very lucky to be part of this disaster risk training and setting up of a EOC, because in practice this is something we do nearly in every disaster, and EOC is activated from DO's office and even within our own units for the health department. Each subdivisional hospital, we activate our EOC. But the fact is, for myself, I haven't received any formal training such as what I'm receiving today on how to properly manage to set up and the whole process that we follow from activation of an EOC, the components of EOC, the management, right down to the closure of an EOC.
for Rotuma, the last disaster that is known to the people of Rotuma is way back in the 70s. That was Cyclone Bembe. We have a new generation on the island, and most of them have no experience at all on what is a cyclone. But they normally go through every week or every month, mostly storm surges. And these people are used to storm surge, and to them it's more similar to our cyclones in Fiji. This training is not only about managing EOC or managing disaster. It's about, for us, training our community to be aware of other factors like coastal erosion, which is happening, affecting almost all our communities around the island. We have issues like overfishing that's going on at the moment. Cutting of trees in a manner that is unsustainable. There are other things happening on the island that communities are not fully aware of the impact. The disaster training is for us a point where we can start off to guide our community to understand what can happen in the future if there's a disaster. But having this training will help our community understand more on how to preserve their own environment, how to look after their resources, how to manage them, how to understand their community. There's a big gap between the elderly and our youth generation.
And I very much want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, from the people of thank you very much.
For us here, especially in Hatmak community, I think it's something very good because we seldom have people like you guys to come around and impart your knowledge on what to do during a disaster. And for me, it is something that should be encouraged. And as we come to the end of the program, I have said already during the speeches that were said there, and I said that this is something that we will try and get the whole community to know as quickly as possible, because we do not know as and when a disaster would strike. After the 5 days training that we have just had, I think we are very much equipped at this moment to be able to do or to get things moving in the community so that people are safe.
Yes, the community, they came in, they were too eager to sit in for the training. And first of all, they were asking what kind of training is this? And I had to explain to them about the disaster risk reduction training that we are here for. So they said that they should have been told earlier so that they can get others from their village. But then they were too enthusiastic to sit in, and they also want this training to be taken to their families and their communities. Now this is the second time around I'm doing training in Rotuma. The last time was 2013, and I'm very pleased to see that whatever I had given them at that time, their response plan, it's still with the lady who has attended this training also.
Firstly, for me personally, being here when I first came into Los, our community is quite isolated. So this training has opened our mindset into like in case of any disaster, we know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So I think for me personally, when disaster hits, I know what I'm supposed to do and when I'm supposed to do it. And then because we have gone through this training, I think we'll go back to our communities and, you know, share with them what we've learned during the training.
So when I went back to Fiji last year, and people asked me, how's Rotuma? And very simply, Rotuma is going back to nature. Going back to nature because all my years dedicated to work in aviation, 40 years, have been very challenging and tiring. But coming back to Rotuma is a world of its own, a world of its own. And I see that Rotuma, what Rotuma has to offer me is really God-given. You look around you, you enjoy the scenery is one. The other thing is I live very close to the sea. And the waves, the sea, when it's high tide, there's nature talking to you. And then there's birds. There are a lot of birds that nest in the tree next to us. And day and night, they're always singing away. And besides the birds, besides the sea, what you see around day and night is really, you know, enforce the thing that I've always mentioned, that here in Rotuma is nature. This is a stepping stone to heaven.
Elavane